All right, welcome to the show. This is Comics Cast, the Artist Roundtable. We're keeping it pretty low numbers today, so we can focus on Mitch Breitweiser and his Allegiance comic series, comic production company, which we'll talk more about. I'm personally, just all cards on the table. I went to Walmart, picked them up. I just really enjoyed that experience. I know that you've had a long kind of road getting here. You've had some interviews recently. You've been on some video chats with people. So I've enjoyed what I've learned up to this point. But yeah, the floor is yours, Mitch. We're just gonna have a chance to chat about your process going from beginning to end. I'm a little frustrated I don't have your comics right now. I went over to Walmart and I think they finally got them out, but they were already sold out by the time I got there. So
Whoa.
Success story for you, annoying for me since they don't have enough prints.
But
good stuff.
You may check again. Sometimes it takes these merchandisers. We're having merchandiser issues, which is, I think, just a thing when you're working in the Walmart planogram space. Anyway, but we're not the only ones that deal with this. But when a product comes out, not all the merchandisers are, on their tippy toes, ready to put the product on the shelves. So it takes sometimes a week and sometimes two in the worst in some cases, but it sometimes takes a week for all the product to populate onto the store shelves. So I'm working on it, trying to remind. Of course, our distributors are awesome, and Walmart's been really cool. But trying to remind our merchandising companies that comic book fans love New Comic Book Day, and they want to come out, and like you said, it's awesome that you mentioned that you had a great experience buying them, because that's kind of what we wanted to cultivate, was a destination for comic book fans, so they could come and just make shopping a little less mundane and come home with something that's a little more special than just toilet paper and essential supplies.
Well, yeah, essential supplies. It's nice to go to Walmart. One of the things that, as an older reader, I would always go, and I just like going to a regular store and being able to pick up a comic if I want to. And one of the things that most stores that aren't comic shops, the only thing they'll have are maybe like 4 or 5 like big run books that are like $30 to pick up. And I'm like, well, it'd be nice to pick up like a few just new issues. Maybe I don't want that big, massive thing of Black Panther. You know what I mean? Like I want something else.
So I mean, if you're looking for that, you go to the bookstore or you'll order it from Amazon. I think we wanted to take a step back and consider that these are like, they're sort of impulse purchases. Mm-hmm. They're brain candy, and they kind of look like brain candy. They're full of color and adventure and fun. And it's, you can walk out with a candy bar and a Coke along with your groceries and, have a nice, read something on your lunch break and toss it on your coffee table, pass it down to your nephew and see how they respond to it, and just have a kind of a bonding experience with family and friends over something that's not a massive, heavy book you have to take and tote around, or, you don't have a $30 investment to get into it. It's so that you can sample it for a few bucks and have it placed somewhere that's convenient for you to
start. I know I picked up all 4 books of yours, and we'll go through them all just to kind of check them all out. And I think the interesting thing is not all of them spoke to me. Not all of them I was like, oh, I love all of them. But I think that's important. If you like almost like every single thing, then that means no one's going to love anything. You gotta like, it's nice that they all have their own tone, their own sort of concept, their own art style and design. I think it's all very, very cool stuff. So yeah, good on you there. How's the let's go back to the beginning. I know that we've got 4 books out initially, and then you've got your next 4 out now that got out about a week ago. So most people can go find them at their Walmarts. And we'll talk about the names. And well, here, why don't we do this? I'm going to share my secondary screen here so they can at least see. Oh, that's not what I wanted to show. There we go. Boom. All right. So this is your website here. Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
All right. So we got Nora's Saga. We got Red Rooster, The Futurists, And is it Bass Reeves?
Bass Reeves, yes.
All right, very, very cool. And this is, I've got the first four, like I said, but you can see that there's your second stack is already sort of being represented here.
That's correct.
At Walmart.com, you also have digital editions. Do you have digital editions of all of them?
We do. We just we haven't announced them quite yet. So
Okay.
actually, you're getting the announcement here, I guess.
Nice.
We're going to do an email blast, an email campaign, and blast it on social media. But I quietly added digital. I'm the web guy. I'm the marketing guy and the web guy, on top of everything else. But yeah, I quietly added digital editions to the web store just a couple of days ago, really, and we've already had several orders, and we haven't blasted it out yet. So that's great for overseas customers. Because right now we don't have distribution across the Atlantic or the Pacific. So that's and of course we have a lot of worldwide fans based on around social media knowledge of our product and IPs. But so there's a way for them to get them, and a lot of people that just prefer that convenience. So that they're available now. So announcing on Comic Cast.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, and we'll push it out. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it gets there. I love this. This animation here is very cool. I mean, Noah Saga is my favorite. Obviously, Gerald Motos is said it's his favorite too, which is cool. I just absolutely love this animation here.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Which one of your books is really your favorite, and are you writing all of the books, or how's your team sort of broken down with these different books?
My wife and I own the company. We founded the company. We're the majority shareholders of the company, and we are also creatives on some of the titles. And Allegiance Arts owns all the. Essentially, Allegiance Arts is the production company for this, and it owns the content. I helped create most of them, along with our COO, Patrick Stiles, who is the writer on The Futurist and a longtime collaborator of mine, met in art school. And we've been friends ever since. And just honestly, we just constantly creating tens of thousands of hours on the phone. So looks like The Futurist was a co-developed project. We have a few others. Red Rooster is my baby. That's the one that I sort of poured all my passion into, and of course I'm the artist on that book for now. Anyway, I probably will move to writer. I don't write any of the book myself yet, although I'll probably will move to writing Red Rooster at some point. But I've participated in the development process, I guess, in pretty much all of them. Maybe except for, well, I mean, even Nora. Each book has its own little story, and it came about in a different way. But we contract talent once we've developed the idea to a point. Then we pitch it out to a collaborator, a content collaborator, or writer, script person, who can come in and take it to the next level. And then from there, we kind of move into an editor role. So we're the producers and editors generally, but we're also creating some as well. And it's I don't know how to describe it. It's a cornucopia of creative. I don't know. I'm just losing my metaphor here.
No, I got you now, and I wanted some clarification on that because I knew you were the owner, or at least majority shareholder. But as I read more and more about you, the 501, I think it's 501st interview, or 501 Life magazine that did an interview on you. I was fascinated to find out, like, you a lot of the same sort of direction that a lot of creatives have. You know, you grow up with a passion for comics. You sort of follow some of the big names, the big three names that sort of go off and fight the man and try to do their own thing. And I loved reading that story, and I kind of wanted to bring a little bit of that story out. I know people can go and we'll share the link to the magazine article that they did a story on you, but I'd love to hear a little bit more directly from you about it, about where you started, some of your influences. And I love how you kept trying even though you had some issues. So let's start from the beginning. Like, I think it's a familiar story with a lot of creatives, but people that are out there that are just want to know who you are, you know, what was your first introduction to comics?
My first, I mean, I guess you kind of know what comic books are a little bit because you grew up reading Sunday papers, so you're sort of exposed to the language of comic books, especially my generation, but I think this generation too with web comics as well. But my dad brought home some comic books one day. Just thought I was already drawing and writing stuff just on my own, just creating characters from cartoons and all kinds of stuff. And my dad brings home some comic books for me and my brother one day, and they were, I remember it very clearly, Spider-Man 2099 with Rick Leonardi on art. Yeah, and it remains a favorite to this day. And as well as that was during the death of Superman, so he brought some of the Death of Superman comics home, and I just remember particularly with that Spider-Man 2099 just being it just lit the fuse essentially.
That was one of the ones of mine. The background, the change of the story, the tone.
Yeah.
The only thing I think I never liked Hulk 2099.
Yeah.
All the other adjustments were super cool. I think that was one of the big ones. It was right there with like Jurassic Park and some of those big things that changed the way I looked at what was possible. Very
Absolutely. Cool. And it sort of everything kind of. Like it's almost weird. It just my whole life kind of clicks into place at that moment in a lot of ways because it's like I was already writing and I loved reading novels and adventure books and stuff like that. And of course, drawing. I've been drawing for a long time and just kind of had a knack at it. But when I saw a comic book like that, that just really transported you to literally another time and place and world with this character. And it was achievable through this mechanism of art and story combined into this thing that you could hold in your hands and flip through and smell and hold on to and collect and come back to, a month later and find something new in the background or, just engage in a different way or share it with a friend. And that whole experience, and it's not just the whole thing, it's the whole thing, the whole full sensory experience of a comic book just kind of grabbed me and I never really let it go. And then I started following the careers of, like guys like Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri. And not long after that, it was the Image Revolution, which was a huge inspiration for me. So not only as I just in this process of falling in love with comic books, but, as I started, these people became kind of heroes, right? So the creators became these heroes, and they had this whole journey,
rock star moment.
Yeah, of leaving, doing the impossible, right? That leaving the big two, the big company comics, the big labels, and striking out on their own with just enthusiasm of that sort of 90s enthusiasm that was just completely encapsulated in all that, but also the entrepreneurialism of the 90s. That was going on at the time, and just to have that bleed into a realm that a medium that I was becoming so passionate about, and watching that story just really stuck with me, and it became something that I wanted to, not replicate, but participate in my own way.
Well, you also saw the possibility of success, like that you could actually have a living doing it and being comfortable. Like you don't have to live underneath the wooden beams of somebody's old house to be able to make comics.
Yeah, I started digging into high school about, well, it's not like it was back then, but I started looking at the numbers, and I'm like, how many of these are they printing, and how much do they cost, and how many of these are they actually selling to customers, and thinking, okay, well, you can make, some of these guys are making good livings. It's not exactly the way it was back then, but we'll get there. We just gotta get everyone to fall back in love with the look, the full sensory experience, like I said earlier, of comic books. And that's totally possible.
Well, I'm just I'm off the screen. Sorry, trying to make sure that some of the technical stuff gets shared out and everything. So I apologize if I'm not engaged, but I'm listening. Sure. So yeah, moving on. Like I saw that part. When did you? At what point were you like, okay, I'm gonna be doing the drawing portion. I do have some ideas. Like I think all creators have ideas for stories, but you worked on your drawing talent, and then you said from the interview that I read, you went off and you kind of attacked and tried to get into the big three, try to get your stuff looked at. how long did you sort of fight that uphill battle, and when did you shift focus? Like, what was your aha moment when you were like, I can actually do this?
I had a lot of chutzpah, I guess, as a high school and college student, because I felt like this was kind of my path.
Yeah,
And it's kind of a hard thing to describe, but when you know it, you just kind of know it. So I was laser focused on this, pretty laser focused on this for really since probably junior high and through college.
good. Yeah,
But I graduated college in the year 2000, and by that time, comic books had suffered its late 90s collapse. And
yeah,
but I just I still thought there was anyway. I packed up senior year of college, started going to convention centers. Like I went to go to Wizworld Chicago. I went to San Diego Con for the first time, and it was the first time I was showing my portfolio around. I remember the sinking sensation when you walk into these things and you think you're really hot stuff at the age of 21, and my portfolio was embarrassing probably compared to some of the others I was seeing, but you walk in and like one out of every 15 or 20 people are carrying that same black portfolio around, and you're like, okay, this is going to be an uphill battle, like you said. But basically I just kept at it, and I left. I grew up in Arkansas, so I left the Arkansas area after college and moved to basically New York City in the suburbs of New York City. So basically as close as I could afford to New York City.
So were you officially in New Jersey at that point, or were you in New York at that?
What's that?
Were you officially in New Jersey area, or were you in New York?
New Jersey for the first 3 years after college. Okay. And so I was meeting up with other people that were interested in comic books. I was just traveling around to shows, meeting new peers. Some of them, like Coy Pham and Riley Brown, they became professionals in their own right. So we were all in this kind of trajectory. So I just started meeting cool people that became peers and professionals along the same path that I did. And we'd help each other out and introduce, we were in our early 20s. So we'd introduce each other to people that we'd met, or travel to conventions together to save some coin. Eventually I quit showing my portfolio and standing in long lines and just buying table space. And that was kind of a game changer for me, because I was just like, you know what, I can do this. I started selling $10 drawings in hopes that I could make my hotel bill and just break even on a trip. And
exactly.
It failed.
Well, before you get to the part where you kind of break over that hump, I wanted, because there's a lot of people that are on here that are future creators or creators right now, and I want them to hear the part that you said. And I don't know what's going on with my frame rate, but I got to work on that with this camera. That yes, you moved, you found a location that was close to the center axis or center point of all activity in New York, Los Angeles, that sort of thing. New York is probably the best one
at the time.
At the time. But you also made networks, you made connections. It wasn't like you stayed in your house and you drew. Like, you were going to these conventions, and you were not only just making connections with people in the industry, but people that were coming up, working, and had the same passions as you. Like, did it help? Obviously it helped because you moved on, but what was the thing that helped you specifically? Was it the positive attitude, the tone, similar creative, juices flowing? What was the thing that helped you in that aspect, connecting with those guys and gals, whoever they were?
Camaraderie and just sharing ideas and relationships, being able to share your passion about something that's so, you specific, right? That a lot of other people might not be so passionate about. Those are all super, super helpful things. And it's just generally great life advice. So if you're beyond just trying to break into comic books or whatever you're trying to do, it's the way business works. And that's something that I've discovered. I stumbled into it sort of naturally because I was so laser focused on getting a career in comic books. But it is how all business works. And I just got back from a business trip that was more focused on the actual running of the publishing business. And it's the exact same thing. You get in there, you build a relationship, you find people that are interested in similar or on similar trajectories and that have similar passion about what you're doing. In this case, we're doing more business stuff. So I met a lot of cool, really cool business people yesterday. Shored up some old relationships, and that will benefit the company and everybody involved with it. And it is just the way life works. It's all relationships. It's talent and drive as well. But you need the people. You've got to be able to cultivate relationships and make connections for others, do nice things for people, and that stuff will just come right back around to you. And
100% for sure. Do you have those initial contacts and the relationships that you made? Any of them flowed all the way to these books that you've got out that are publishing now?
Not those early relationships, although I'm still friends with a lot of those guys, and I hope that we'll be able to collaborate sometime. The New Jersey crew, New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, we kind of had a nexus of creators that were many of them now working today. The one that Patrick, our chief operating officer and the writer, he's been my collaborator since college, so that's a relationship I had pretty early on. And of course, Elizabeth, who I met about a year after I started. I met her in 2005, so it was it was a few months after I started working for Marvel under an exclusive contract. So she's one of my relationships from my mid-20s, and she stuck with it and stuck with me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into your initial feedback that you got from the big ones that you were like, okay, I'm gonna swing for the fences here. What was your initial feedback? Get out of here, kid. Your stuff is garbage. And how did you? I imagine it was constructive criticism.
I remember. I mean, my very first interview was with Scott Alley, formerly of Dark Horse Comics, and he's been really cool to me ever since. But he saw something, and then I got some, feedback like work on your hands, or, your eyes are wonky. I never got the horror story, and I actually sought out those horror stories. Like, who's the fellow that always just is famous for just tearing people up? I'm blanking on the name. Famous artist. Somebody will remind me. I actually went in his line set in his line for an hour, just hoping for a harsh critique, and he just said, "Yeah, these are pretty good. Yeah, you might be able to do this." So, my artwork.
You could see this is your artwork here, right? And how much of this did you pencil? Did you digital ink it? Did you
penciled and inked these things? So I've been penciling digitally for some time, and it's a mix of digital and traditional inking in this project.
I just loved your it's unique to your style. But it's still very clean. So it's like right on the cuff of like all your energies there. But it's enough line work and texture to like sort of anchor the images. But it has your own flavor, man. Like I saw that and initially thought, all the energies there in the inks. Like you can see that you're not like it's chalky inks, so it's got sort of a
poof.
Why am I having blanking on the Return of Batman, all that good stuff? Frank Miller style,
right?
It's got like those nice heavy inks. And like you're not afraid of having a nice solid blacks in there, and you're not feathering out of the blacks. Absolutely loved it. I totally was down the second I saw it. I was like, yeah, it's not super polished, and that's good. Like when things get super polished, then a couple of things happen. Either it gets very stale very quick, all the energy is out of it, or everything is so polished that it's hard to tell what the focal point is. So yeah, I dug it right when I saw it. I mean, obviously, like I said, the other book is my favorite, but I gravitated towards this art style because it's kind of similar to my own, where I love to sort of just like the pencils are done, and they're done. Like I'm going to inks, like, and the pencils, most people be like, your pencils are done? Are you sure? Do you want to go back over them like 12 more times? I was like, nope, go right into inks. Let's go. Get all the energy still in there. So
awesome. Well, I'm glad that
I love it, man. Love it. Sorry for getting off topic, but the point was they saw your stuff. They saw that you could do it. Like they were giving you that sort of like, hey, clean it up a little bit, work on your hands, work on your eyes a little bit. But
I never got thrown out of or anything. So nothing really tragic ever happened to me in terms of a critique. But the most discouraging thing, which was actually a positive if you look at it the right way, and that's one of the things about life, you just have to look at adversity in the right light, and it can actually be a boon. But if I had $1 for every editor that told me, hey, this is not too bad, if this was 5-6 years ago, I'd hire you today. Like you'd have a job like today. Of course, this was early,
when were they saying that?
Early 2000s, right?
Early 2000s.
What they were hearkening back to was the time when comic books were flowing like water down the river, right? Back in the mid 90s and all that kind of good stuff. So I got a lot of comments, but it became a meme for me anyway, personally, because it was so often that multiple editors and different editors from different companies would be like, if this was 5 years ago or whatever, I'd have a book for you today. So, but, I took that as an encouraging sign, because that meant that, if things turn around, people are responding, they're responding well. And so I just kept at it. Things changed a little more for me too. And I decided I wasn't a penciler. My pencils are rough and dirty and not maybe the super best. And I started really learning how to use do brush inking. So that changed. It complemented my pencil style, and it allowed me to create art in the way that you responded to it, where it just had just enough. It was just enough to express the body movement, the language, the body language, and what the image needed to hold the viewer's interest for just the right amount of time. And being able to control that with the inks helped me develop a visual language that worked for me.
Well, but also not to sort of skip on this, but a lot of comic book artists have issues with faces, and I think. And what I mean by faces is the faces kind of all look the same. Even the greats like Jim Lee, like sometimes the faces kind of somewhat look the same. So I wanted to compliment you on that too. Like your faces are unique, they're interesting, and that's a great thing too. So talking about that, like you hit that, you got that critique. You went home and you're like, okay, it wasn't a murder board. It wasn't they didn't destroy me, right? So you took those critiques and you ran with it. So how long were you knocking on that door before you sort of saw that it was kind of your turn in the corner?
Okay. So it was about, I graduated in 2000 and started getting my contract with Marvel started at the end of 2005, like fall of 2005. And I consider that success. Like from college, like starting from scratch and then getting a contract, a 2-year exclusive contract with Marvel took 5 years. And at the time, it was the 5 longest damn years of my life. And looking back on it and seeing how hard it can be for other people that do this kind of thing, it really wasn't, so, but at the time it was brutal because I was working at Starbucks, serving coffee. No, I'm not above doing anything. Like before in college, I was a tree cutting guy. So served coffee. I went on to work for a sign company in New Jersey, designing industrial signage. So then I moved to kind of a cushy office job. Or it wasn't that cushy. It was field. Right. Design the signs and then help install them. But it was sort of creative, a little bit, not really, but a little bit. But I just kept at it, and I'd get some hit or miss work. And I did a book called Phantom Jack, which is a very little known Image comic book written by Mike, and I'm going to butcher his last name. Is it Scigliano? I'm going to totally butcher it. A journalist out of Philadelphia. reporter out of Philadelphia. Did 6 issues of that. Left New York for a year to live in Nashville, Tennessee. Played in a band, like a country rock band, for a year while I did that book. Finished it. The book really wasn't successful in terms of, well, it really just wasn't a successful project. And that was in 2004. And then I got, kind of fate happened in some ways. Kind of, I wasn't a wealthy person by any stretch, as probably most starving and struggling cartoonists and comic book artists are. But I was rear-ended by a sweet little old lady who totaled my car, and I had an outsized check for a crummy used car that I had, and decided I would buy a one-way plane ticket and go live in Manhattan and tap all my old connections, and I would just see how far my money went until it ran out, because I was getting frustrated. I was thinking, maybe this comic book thing isn't necessarily for me. I have other talents and abilities. I could go get a graphic design job or work at a marketing firm.
You said this after having an image job already. Like, you had 6 issues you were on. You had good feedback. You were like, basically, you were the struggling artist somewhat, but you were also, had these doors open already.
Yes.
And you're still at this point in your career going, I don't know if this is the right career path for me. And
well, I'm getting close to 25 at the time, or so, or 26, probably close to 25 or 25, right? And it's just, at some point I have to get a job that is a real job, right? That has that I can start a family with and take care of my kids and all this kind of stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's one of these things that nags at you as you're pursuing dreams, right? Mm-hmm. So and that's what was nagging at me at the time. But I just lived in. I essentially gave myself until a few months. So I'll give myself a few months. I won't have a job. I've got enough money to live for just a little bit and just work on the comic books and comic book drawing. And so I did that. I moved into Manhattan at that time, and it was a converted hotel room. It was no place to live really, but I just had an air mattress and a drawing table that I picked up in Chelsea one day, like $100 drawing table, cheap old thing. And I would draw pages. And I had a friend, Sean Chen, who's a very talented artist, and he lives in New York City at the time. He would turn his pages in by hand every Friday or every other Friday. So I would call him on Thursday afternoon and say, are you going to turn your pages in for X-Men, his X-Men book that he was working on? And he would say yes or no. If he said yes, I would ask if I could meet him there and what time he's planning to arrive. And so if he was going to be there, I would meet him, and he would sneak me up the freight elevator into the editorial floor. And I just started. I was going for broke. I was like, I'm going to give this 6 months. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and I'll figure something out with my life. But I was drawing my butt off and hustling my butt off and pulling every connection I could to make this happen. And in those tours across the editorial floor started paying dividends. I would have packages ready with my name and number and new samples in them from the week before. If an editor was busy or had their door closed, I just slide them under the desk. If an editor looked like they were just lounging around doing nothing and they had a minute, I would approach them and just ask them to look at my work and see if they noticed any improvement from the month or a few weeks before. And then I started meeting people. I met a lot of cool guys like Paul Azastita, who worked at that time in the Bullpen and who's now a talented artist. My wife colors his work on the book Outcast for Robert Kirkman, which is very good. You should go check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
I met guys like him. So I started, meeting the people that are in and associated with Marvel. And I became a little closer with Andy Schmidt, who now runs the Comics Experience kind of online comic book school.
Okay. No. I come across it every once in a while online. I keep looking at it going, okay, this looks actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's been in the comic book business for a long time because he was just a couple years older than me, I think, and he was working as an assistant editor under Tom Brevoort at the time. But a project came up it was at it for a number of months, probably 5 months or so, and I finally got a tryout gig for Drax the Destroyer, which I had never even heard of at the time. And as I tried out for it,
at that point he wasn't a mainstay, kind of huge character that he is now, for sure.
It was before it was the book. It turned out to be a huge success. So I did these samples, and Andy showed them to Keith Giffen, who's quite a character, the writer for that project and many others. He's well known in the business. But he loved them, and I got the job, and it became, I rushed through issue 1. So issue 1's not my best work because I needed a paycheck. Started taking my time with issue 2 and doing the absolute best I could do. And halfway in the middle drawing of issue 2, DC started calling, and they were looking for artists to fill. They wanted new artists that could fill out some new books in the fall, next spring. And so they were interested in my work. And so I immediately call Andy and say, hey, I just got a call from DC. So I have leverage at that point. So it's
nice.
Use your leverage. Leverage it can move mountains. So I call Andy up and say, Andy, I'm really enjoying this project, and so far Marvel's been really awesome, and I'm having a great time. And but DC just called, and they have these projects in the spring, and they're interested in working with me on them. This is only a 4-issue project I was doing. So I said, what does my life look like here after I'm done with this book?
Done with this series. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good call.
And so he basically, he took it to Joe Quesada that day, and by the next day I had a phone call from Joe, and they offered me a 2-year exclusive contract, which was pretty incredible at the time. And I was pretty floored by it. And then I made my plans to leave New York for that. My job was done. I had my in, and I knew the book was going to be good, and it was well received, and it was kind of a surprise hit. And that book led to that rebooting of the cosmic universe. It led to that Guardians of the Galaxy series.
That's wild.
That really took off after that.
Very cool. I feel like now that I know you and I know your work, I feel like I've come across that art. A lot of times I don't know the artist on specific books, but I recognize your work, and I know I've come across. I'm gonna have to find that. And do you know which? So you weren't specifically on Drax the entire time. Like, you started and you had that portion, then you moved on to some other books during your contract. Do you remember what Drax the Destroyer books that you did?
It was just called Drax the Destroyer. It came out in 2005, and it was a 4-issue miniseries written by Keith Giffen. And I'm going to have to pardon myself for 1 second while I grab my power cord, because
I saw you were kind of working that. So go ahead and grab that.
Will die here.
All right, guys, so check this out. I'm going to pull up what we were talking about. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen. Let's see here. Boom. Look at this. All right, so this is what we're talking about here. This is his work. So he's got Nora's Saga, which obviously, what we talked about before. It looks like my camera might be frozen. It might be. Yeah, it looks frozen. All right. So I guess that's not going to happen the way I wanted it to. All right. So for some reason, my camera is frozen on my phone. Well, with others, probably because it's not charging right now. It is charging. It just doesn't want to be nice to. Oh, now it's working. It probably just showed me staring at it. That's okay. Whatever. That's weird. All right.
Okay.
So all right. So this thing just doesn't want to work well with us. All right. I was going to show the book, and then the entire thing's decided. I'm just going to remove you. Okay. Good. And we will go back to
here. These are the episode 2 books.
Let me get you. Oh wait, let me get you full screen. I want to look at those books. All right, can you pull up the episode 2?
Yeah, these are the episode 2 books here. This one's The Futurists with Butch Geis, art, and Rick Magyar on inks. Both great guys. Bass Reeves. These are the second episodes, which should be available now at Walmart, and you can check our website.
You can order them. You can order them through the website, and you can also purchase a digital download. Is that correct?
Yes, you can purchase a digital download. Our distributor has had widespread issues with their online listings, so you can't order them yet, but I am told it should be very, very soon. They should have all this fixed.
Entrepreneur issues, challenges. Nora Saga. I
Yes.
can't say more about Nora Saga, Red Rooster. Those two are just wow. Awesome. Nora Saga, I was gushing over them last week when we talked. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
The beautiful Shannon artwork.
Yeah. That's episode 2.
This is episode 2. Yes.
Oh, I don't want to see it. Oh no! Don't give me. Don't. I don't want to have any spoilers. So good, so good.
Well, here's the Futurists. I think this is one of Butch's completely amazing pages here.
And how much of this do you have Pod's control over as far as the layouts? Do you have any? Do you kind of stay with some of the art director to be like, hey, make sure you guys are doing this, this, and this, or do you allow each book to have their own editors sort of to play with?
Every artist we're working with here is very experienced, and these are high caliber professionals. And so what's in the script is generally represented on the page. So we just make sure that the scripts are what they need to be and what we want them to be. And they usually are. We're working with really good writers as well. We just work with the writers to get the script that we need, that the books need, the character needs. And these artists deliver. They always deliver. They don't have to micromanage.
No, I got you. No, I was just curious because one of the things that I like to focus on that I've noticed is that's all very good as far as having proper backgrounds, settings. Like they're not rushed through the panels, and it always feels. Sorry, excuse me. Let me get us back up. It always feels like you know where the characters are, and it's not just like one establishing shot per page. Like it's a nice flow of medium wide shots and action shots, but even in those action shots, it's not they're not cutting corners. So my question on that is this going to be? Are you going to be able to sustain like monthly books with this, or what's your release schedule that you're looking at?
So we've built in as an artist, I'm trying to solve business problems from an artist perspective and from a customer perspective as well, a fan perspective. Yeah. So we're not doing monthly books. These are bi-monthly releases. And the reason being is you cannot create what we're creating every single month without just sending in replacement artists all the time. And that's not something that I wanted to do because in my experience as a fan, but also just watching others and how they bond with character based IP, you need that consistency. People they want something familiar, but also want something new, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a new experience in the story, and the characters go on this incredible journey. But if the characters don't look like the same characters from book to book, then people are going to have a lot more trouble falling in love with the world and the characters and the narrative than they would otherwise. It'd be like watching a Netflix show where 3 episodes into the Netflix show they changed some of the actors, and it's just, okay. That's
so you're saying bi-monthly, right? So that's not too bad. I mean, I think people exist on that. Also, I mean, for me personally, I've been a huge comic fan for so long, and all I can say is from my own experience, when I got involved with this, I instantly was hooked to a point where I would go and buy one every month if they were to come out. So I'm just kind of blown away by, I think you found sort of that magic twitch. You found a way to sort of like find that sweet spot for independent comics that I think, and that's the main reason I really wanted to make sure you got on the show is,
thank you.
I don't want to say you're revolutionizing the industry, but you definitely found a spot that works. And I'd love to hear from you about how that started. Obviously you worked for Marvel, and then at some point you're like, okay, I'm going to break off and do my own thing. Kind of like I saw my quote unquote mentors of the people that, came before us with Image. We're about the same age, I assume. So you came up on that. You saw them do that. When did you switch over and decide to start your own company, and then you kind of worked your way into Walmart in that sort of venue? And where do you see maybe do you think that this is your thing, this is your space, or are you going to keep bringing more and more people under Allegiance, or maybe you're just going to be next to other publishers, next to other indie publishers? That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is a lot to unpack. You may have to guide me through this process. All right. So Elizabeth, my wife Elizabeth, who's a well-known color artist, I think she's back there somewhere. So we've been, so she's been a color artist since 2000, what was it, 7 or 8, something like that. Starting with Marvel as well, and it just became. I knew I wanted to kind of branch out into this at some point in my career. It somewhere around, I want to say it was 2013 or so. This things were changing. Disney and Marvel. It just wasn't the same kind of thing. It has a lot of editorial turnover, especially at the time. It may still today. I don't really check in, but just things were changing, and it didn't feel like the right place. The double shipping of books that was occurring at the time was incredibly difficult, especially on her as a colorist, and it just wasn't. It wasn't. We weren't having the same experience. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And you just kind of know when it's time to leave. So we both parted ways around the same time. She, in fact, opted not to sign another 2-year exclusive deal with them. And from there, we partnered up with the idea at the time and was to start some kind of publishing venture. But figuring that out is extremely complicated. Because we have these ideas, and I pitched them to some business guys, and it wasn't there, right? It wasn't there. The market wasn't quite ready for it either. I don't think you could launch a publishing venture. Well, first of all, you'd have to get funding for it, right? That's a whole one thing. You have to get business people to believe in it and be passionate about it. The content has to be there as well, and our content wasn't far enough down the line at that point either in 2013. Mm-hmm. But our passion was definitely there, and the kernel of it was all there. And I still have a big, giant Post-it note where I have the whole thing pretty well sketched out as to what it would be. But we basically started a small family business, like an illustration services company called Brightweiser House. And Elizabeth and I just started servicing other people's projects. So particularly her as colorist, and then I was kind of be a colorist assistant in part of those years. And as a team, we just managed a business, like helping other creators, especially with Ed Brubaker, who we had met in our time at Marvel. He was having a lot of success with his independent projects at Image Comics, like Fatale and Fade Out and Killer Be Killed and Velvet with Steve Epting, who's a really great guy. And so we just started servicing their books for coloring, and instead of we would negotiate a little differently. So instead of with Marvel or DC, you're kind of stuck with a pretty paltry royalty rate, especially if comic books are in a down market. But when we started servicing more higher end independent books, then we knew we had the best. We knew we had the best coloring in comics, and that was on offer to independent people. So we offered them to guys like Robert Kirkman and Ed Brubaker, who had very successful independent books, and we just negotiated per book. So that we actually, as business people, we did pretty well. So we just got better at running businesses and negotiating and being independent and living in that independent world. And then while we were doing that, and she was doing most of the coloring, I was doing a couple other did random illustration projects and did a little book for HarperCollins, which never quite made it out to the shelf, which is kind of sad, but I'd like to see it happen still one day. But I was working on building this thing. Working on the Red Rooster project, the Futurist project, trying to just watch the market and find a place to inject our vision into it. But the numbers never really added up, right? If you go into a comic book store, and as comic book stores were shrinking, by the quarter in terms of their number, comic book publishers kept putting out more and more content. So the shelves, essentially, you're competing against 300 books a week in a comic book store. And just having a little more insight into the back end of the business, and just knowing exactly how those things were moving and selling, we never found a space, right? It just wasn't, it wasn't the right space. And so what happened for us was that crowdfunding revolution that occurred in 2018, which we were, happened to be on the first wave of it in a sense. And I think all that work put into products like Red Rooster started paying dividends, because I was creating all this stuff publicly. I felt like there was no harm in, I had nothing to lose by keeping all of my stuff to myself. So I would create and share sketches on Twitter and Facebook and just try to see what would work in the public, see what people were responding to. And then I jumped on YouTube as well, and around that time frame, and I would just pitch to anybody. So I started honing my pitches. I'd pitch to strangers, and if they tuned out and their eyes glazed over, I knew, either something was wrong with either my product or with my pitch. And so I just kept doing it. And the YouTube thing is incredibly helpful. So what you're doing is going to benefit you immensely in whatever you do, because you get better at selling. You just get better at communicating ideas to people, right? That's really all selling something is. You're selling either a vision or a product or yourself. You're really just communicating a vision and an idea to other people. And you get better at doing that by being on places like this. And all of that coalesced and congealed into this Red Rooster campaign. And then after the success of the Red Rooster campaign, a good buddy of mine who's a longtime comic book fan and a very successful businessman in his own right, had just said, wanted me to talk to someone here in town in Little Rock named David Martin, who I had known about and had met before. But anyway, Elizabeth and I got in touch with this David Martin, who was a very successful businessman here in the central Arkansas or in the Arkansas area. And we pitched this whole vision essentially, and it was comic books back into neighborhood marketplaces with high caliber content. Like, just, it has to be great content with experienced high caliber professionals from our network that we've built up over, a combined, I don't know, 30 years, 20 years in the business, 15 years in the business, however many years it was. But our Elizabeth and I's network and myself's network of very, very talented creators that we've had the good fortune of becoming friends with and having relationships with. So, and then getting the comic books into places where, because I'm in the Midwest, it sounds like you're in California or on the West Coast, but I'm in Washington, you're in the Midwest. I mean, all the way from the Rockies. I've got a buddy in Durango, Colorado. He has to drive over an hour to the next state to get to a comic book store. And Durango is not a little town. It's a pretty big town.
So you were talking to these business guys. You made your pitch like, this is being created by industry professionals that I've cultivated my relationships with. And this was now how did that link from talking to him and making that pitch work to starting to communicate to these larger stores?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great, it is a hell of an adventure and quite a long one for us. So it was selling the first person who had more relationships, right? So I didn't have relationships with the people that could open the doors at Walmart, but he did, right? We didn't have relationships at Walmart necessarily, but that was the ultimate vision. Let's get them into Walmarts, because I discovered comic books like almost everybody else in a grocery store. I discovered them in a family-owned drugstore, right? So it has to be in your small town. If I hadn't seen that comic book, I wouldn't be here, So that's the case for a lot of people our age. And as they're shrinking comic book stores, there are just fewer and fewer people able to actually just discover that full sensory experience of what a comic book is. But once David was interested, then he just started making some calls, and we pitched to anybody essentially. So anybody that might know somebody that could open a door. And it was just over and over and over again, preparing those things, preparing pitches. I was on the phone with talent for hours and hours and hours, just seeing who might be interested in walking this journey with us. At the time, it wasn't just going to be a comic book publishing company that myself and Elizabeth owned. I mean, I was sort of putting feelers out all around. I was putting a lot of feelers out. So a lot artists that you would very, very much know, and that are doing work today still. So a lot of people were very, very interested, but not as so much interested in the risk involved with what we were doing. So it was a very risky venture. And it took many, many, many months to get it all set up. But one door opens another, and eventually we meet. We met the gentleman that I met with yesterday.
Your battery doesn't die on you. It looks like you're starting to come in and out a little bit. Just make sure your phone. Okay, so you're good now. You just froze for a second. So no, he's gonna die 4 minutes out.
So we're in Little Rock, and we started traveling to Bentonville frequently, which is where Walmart is. But it's not just where Walmart is; it's where a lot of key businesses operate. So Tyson Chicken is there, JB Hunt Trucking Company is there. But Walmart has this a policy that if you're a vendor in Walmart, you have to have an office or an outpost of your company within 30 miles or 30 minutes of the headquarters of Walmart itself. And so what that happened about 15 years ago or 20 years ago or so, and that has created a business revolution in this state. And so we were traveling, so people from all over, business people from Chicago, marketers from New York, producers from California, they're all coming in and out of this little bitty town in Northwest Arkansas, which isn't so little bitty anymore. And so we just started going up there as often as possible to meet people and build relationships that were all the tentpoles necessary to build and sustain a comic book and content creation company, right? So, and they're very much about content. And so keep making content. People are very interested, and it's got a bright future for content. But eventually we met a key individual who I just saw again yesterday, who was an executive placement, the owner of an executive placement firm. And what they do is it's like a headhunter, but for CEOs and high-level executives. So he had all these relationships, and we pitched this gentleman, just a cold pitch. We went up there. We didn't even get the meeting until that morning, and it was just kind of like an afterthought. But we stepped into his office, and we just pitched for about 15 minutes, and he didn't say a word, and then he just said stop, and he was just reading our body language, and he's like, it was like Shark Tank. It was a Shark Tank experience, and I had several of those, but the most crystalline one. So he just said stop. I hear 10 things like this a week, and this is the coolest thing I've heard in years. And
cool, I just dropped the F-bomb almost. That's awesome.
It was awesome, and it was validating. This is a very important and connected individual. And then he said, I'm gonna get the right people in the room, and I want you to come here and do this song and dance again, but with all your slides and art and everything you have to show. And I'm going to get the right people in the room, and I want you to pitch them. And so we did, and we pitched. We did the pitch that day, and we met a gentleman who would be our vendor rep into Walmart. So it's the guy that that's how you get into these big box stores. You have vendor representation, and they are sort of they're the ones, they don't work for Walmart, but they have the relationships with the buyers in both Walmart or Best Buy or Target or whatever the Costco, whatever the store may be. They're the ones that have those relationships, and they help you sell your product and expand your offerings and grow your company. So I met that person there. We met a producer from Nickelodeon, who's an Emmy Award-winning producer.
That'd be great. Any one of these books can transition to a Nickelodeon concept. That would be awesome.
It's definitely, we're going for it. We're going to take these things as far as we can take them. And that's that we believe all this content that we're creating has a life beyond the comic book. And essentially the comic book is a very pure and like I said, I keep saying full sensory, but a pure and full sensory expression of the content, because you can, it's not too expensive. It's very cheap. You bond with the product. You can hold it in your hands. You live in that world. It is in your lap. You can smell it. You can smell the pulp of the paper, and it just stays with you. But the content created, and it's not as expensive, obviously, as creating a cartoon series or a film or whatever, right? So it's a very relatively inexpensive way of storyboarding something out for content that has a life beyond the printed page. So,
well, as somebody who's the reader, I'm just gonna speak as if I'm your comic book audience, okay? So I appreciate what you've started, because as far as from me on the outside, I'm just getting involved now. This is first episode, right? I mean, legitimately. So now we're going to episode 2. So from my point of view, I'm like, okay, I'm really happy. He's, I'm happy for you, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'm happy he's looking at the big picture and doing these other things. But just alone, Nora Saga has a theatrical feel to it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that play out on however many issues you need for that first story to finish. So hopefully you can, while also, shooting for the stars, that whole TMNT, you make a comic, then they're wanting to make a cartoon, then they're on to make a movie and make toys, all this sort of stuff. But, that passion for that comic series, I think, always sort of grounds it to a legitimacy of that love for the initial material. And so my only 2 cents on that as a fan is I hope that, you don't lose sight of that initial content of that comic, because I think they are magic in a bottle, and you can kind of sprinkle it around and move to other things, but it's that initial content. As a fan, if that love and passion is still there, I think your fans will follow you on other content as well. Just
awesome. I agree with you. And we're not like, I've seen it happen before where, somebody rolls in with pockets full of cash, and just wants to start a comic book company, but really what they're doing is creating test beds for IP that they can pump out. But those things typically are people that come from outside of comics and see the value in creating the content in this manner. But that doesn't always create an authentic experience. In fact, I think it usually has the opposite effect. But we're very much coming from the bottom of comic books and coming up through the system, and learning it all as we go. We learn so what we wanted to create was an authentic. The comic book is where it starts. And we know that, and we understand that, and that experience has to be authentic, and it has to be excellent. It can't be like your half-assed script for a film you'd like to do one day. It's got to be fully realized, So we're very much about that, and we understand that's definitely a concern for a lot of fans, because they've been burned or they feel like they've been their medium or whatever that they love so much hasn't been you're treated with respect by necessarily, you know what I mean? So
and I think as we come to a close, I wanted to again talk about Mitch here from Allegiance Arts. You can go to allegiancearts.com to get order books. The digital is in production, but it looks like it should work here relatively soon.
Digital is available now.
Digital is available.
Digital is available today from our website.
Okay.
Of course, we have a store locator on our website too, so you can check to see if your Walmart store is in the list. Results may vary. We're still figuring out the whole Walmart merchandising system. And also, you can buy them from walmart.com. Book 2 is not available yet on their website, but I'm told they're fixing their stuff soon, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, or else I'll be upset.
I know in my Walmart, they had the Futurist and the Bass Reeves episode 2 still there. So, so hopefully they can keep as Walmarts get picked up and they get more orders. It just seems like you're going to get on a train, and this thing is hopefully going to feed back to you so you're comfortable and you can keep building this content. So that's phenomenal. I do want to touch on one thing that we talked about. You understanding and respecting the medium. You come from comics, you come from Marvel, you come from a long line of putting the work in, putting the grind in, and just bothering the hell out of people, as Todd would say. Just keep bothering them until they have to say yes because they want you to go away. So that was a great story to hear. But also, as a businessman, you've built this whole thing up. You've had your mistakes, you've had your missteps, you've learned along the way, and then you just broke a new ground into Walmart, which is amazing. And as the comic book, as far as comic book stores become a different avenue for the hardcore readers to get their stuff, the normies, the guys who go watch the movies, the guys like me that grew up on it, but I have got 3 kids and a wife. I'm not going to the comic book store to spend $60 every other week. I can go to Walmart and pick up a book that I know and I love. So hopefully that builds a trend, and you've started something that could really grow. And I think that would be really awesome. That being said, I don't want it to take away from you. I understand that you don't want to be, amongst 30, 40, 50 books, but that's still better than a full comic book store full of 1,000 books, right? But my point is, okay, so you did all that. You had some issues. You got through those challenges. Now I would say you're a success, and hopefully you continue to be a success. There was some issues with your initial crowdfunding. So going on that, I think as I push this out, we get more and more viewers on thing. I one of the things I'd really like to see, just coming from somebody who's new, wasn't part of the crowdfunding, spoken to some people that was a part of the crowdfunding for you. There was some issues with that, and I think everything I've talked to you at this point, we talked last week, it seems like there might have just been some errors, some missteps, but I think that everything you've done up to this point has been always done with good intentions. And I'd love to see if during this program, if you had anything that you needed to say about it, get it off your chest, or just to clarify some things.
Sure.
I think that would be good for some people that are on the fence and may hear something on Twitter or whatever, clarify it here,
Yeah, well, definitely you get into this position and you get rumors and hearsay get way out of control, and I have no way to really stop it other than to tell people that we're keeping people updated on our crowdfund and to read the updates. And for those that have stuck with us through this entire journey, we appreciate them immensely. So the way it worked out, and this is not the way I wanted it to work out. It was the way things had to work out, because I got very, very overwhelmed very quickly with essentially an order for hundreds of thousands of comic books. The initial commission on this was to start with 8 titles. And this was in the very early days before. And then I had to tell them that that's impossible. We can't even we can't do 8 titles. So the ask, what we were being asked to do immediately after succeeding on the crowdfund was a huge and tall order. So we had an opportunity to take these things into Walmart. I couldn't, I was drawing the book, starting to draw the book, but progress was incredibly difficult to achieve, which is difficult. I mean, if you're an artist, if you're putting your best foot forward on art, it is not an easy job. It's a full-time job and a half. But then we were tasked with almost immediately, I don't want to say the word saddled, but we were tasked with another set of impossible jobs, which was to bring first the opportunity to sell the company, to sell this vision of comic books in Walmart and other convenient locations around the country, and to build these relationships with the distributors that we needed to have to make this happen, and also get the talent on board and to create the content. It just was crazy. There's really no excuse. I wish I had done the book in advance of the crowdfund. And if I knew now if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have delayed it somewhat, but then that opportunity might not have arisen. So it was at the right place at the right time with not enough pages done when it all broke loose. And then it became very difficult to manifest a entire publishing company and all its content while simultaneously drawing and inking my own book. So it's just the nature of what we got into, and the nature of creating art at this level of quality. And those things just let's say it's just too much going through the dam. You know what I mean?
Well, as you keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and
we're almost done with the book.
So it's awesome. And as things are flowing, again, allegiancearts.com. I mean, it's a .com. It's easy to find, Allegiance Arts. So if you have any issues with that, if you're with your crowdfund situation, and as you get bigger, are you setting up any way of communicating directly with any backers or anything like that? Or do you have any, so if somebody wanted to reach out to you and ask you personal questions or, about the books, what's the best way for people to sort of throw the bat signal up for the great and powerful Mitch?
Well, it's the best way.
I think you're on Twitter, so if there's an issue, I guess they could probably just.
No, I left Twitter. Twitter became too crazy. Like Twitter became where drama got started, and it honestly made my wife's and mine, or made our lives hell for the last few months. Well, oftentimes. So we just left. And honestly, life has been a lot better since we left Twitter because that just is. I have no idea what they say on there. We don't visit. We don't even go to Twitter anymore.
I think maybe some of your artists are on there because I did discuss.
Some of our artists are on there. Yes, the company has a Twitter page. So Allegiance Arts has a Twitter page, and our chief operating officer manages it.
Oh, okay.
But just Twitter became not fun. Not fun at all. I'm on Facebook. So that's a great way to just interact. If you just want to interact with me personally, I've got a few slots left before I reach my max on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I know. They won't let you change it to official person. It's really annoying. You're probably still on your personal one. So like once you get 5,000.
I am, and I've only got like 30 or 40 slots available. So if you want to get on my Facebook, now's the time to do it. So if you enjoyed this interview and you want to follow what we're doing in a more personal way, that's a good place. But go to Facebook and like the Allegiance Arts page. I'm the one that manages that page too. So if you interact with the Allegiance Arts Facebook page, you're interacting with me. Sometimes my wife, Elizabeth, as well.
I think that's how I hooked up this interview. So it works well. Yep.
Yeah. So especially if you want to make an interview request, and then we have a contact. We have a contact email on the allegiancearts.com webpage.
Okay, good.
So you can go in there and contact us to our regular info box from there. If you have a general request, you can just managing one thing that is managing customer service, which is also something that I've handled.
Whole team onto itself for sure.
Yeah, especially when you're spread across 2 Indiegogos. A Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram.
You're in how many stores across the United States now?
It's over 3,000. The target rollout was 3,380. But that's as it is with these types of rollouts. Not all of them make it, but it's over 3,000 stores at least, probably a little more.
On that note, do you have anything else you want to add? I'll go ahead and close up the show.
No, it's been a real pleasure, and again, I just really appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate I appreciate you telling me your experience with the Allegiance Arts comic books, and it sounds like from everything that you have told me, you're the kind of fan and customer that we were hoping to catch the eye of. A guy with a busy life but has kids and just wants to, step back and enjoy this. 4-color experience.
Just enjoy the experience, a good quality experience.
Yeah, exactly. And then share them with the kids when they're ready,
Yeah. So yeah, it was a really great interview. Thank you for sitting down with me and talking for an hour and some change. I thank you for opening up on some of the good and bad experiences. I think we have an audience that are both creatives but also just fans. So the whole point of Comics Cast is to unite fandom of the indie world. And to unite creators, which is what you say when you're going out. Some people ask me the same question, like, how do you know so many people, or how have you cultivated those relationships? It's just when you're out there, keep positive people around you and reach out to people that are also creatives, and then don't be a jerk online. And it's pretty easy to keep solid relationships with people.
Yeah, the best way to ruin your shot is to go around and be a jerk. Right? I mean,
And that's why I wanted to give you a shot at sort of talking directly to some of people that may get on Twitter and be like, Mitch is a jerk, he doesn't have my book, or I've waited 2 years for my book, or whatever. All our interactions so far have been phenomenal. Everyone's a busy person, so it's hard to have a chat every day, but it's been nice. It was professional. It was great. And I really appreciated you being on the show. And I'm looking forward to my books. I'm frustrated that Walmart's not all stocked up, but I think everyone's just buying them. So all success in the future for you. Congratulations on what you've done. It's been a long road. I think you've created something that gives us indie creators as well as fans something to look forward to that maybe is opening up a door to a total different way to buy comics and have that experience. So I appreciate that.
Since maybe you have a large indie creator audience, I'll leave them with this. And this is a discussion I had with a key individual yesterday. This is a very well respected businessman. And we had this conversation about content and the future of content. The playing field has just been leveled for all of you. Okay. So before there were mountains to climb, and there still are, but those mountains are a lot smaller today than they were 6 months ago. So the culture and the media landscape is changing rapidly right now, and you have an opportunity. So I would say if you're passionate about comic books and passionate about your content that you're creating, this is a time to go for it, because it won't be like this forever. But on the other side of what's occurred over the last many months, it is just, like I said, a level. It's been leveled. The battlefield has been leveled, and you have a chance to go out there and do your thing.
Perfect. Good way to close it out. Go out and do your thing. Go make comics. AllegianceArts.com. Go to your Walmart or Target as well. 3,000 stores. Mitch is in your backyard. So just go get those comics. There's 4 of them out there. Just ask Walmart. They usually have them either by the books or over there by Electronic Arts or the electronics section. Great interview. Yep. Thank you, Mitch, so much. It was awesome. I'm going to close up the show. Thank you guys for watching. You can catch us on YouTube on Indie Comics Cast, and then Facebook at Comics Cast. We're also on Instagram on Comics Cast. But if you're watching this, go ahead and share it out. Get this out there as much as possible. I think excellent interview, awesome things, awesome information. If you just scanned all the way to the end to see what happened, go back to the beginning and watch it all over again. So that being said, thank you so much, Mitch, and I'll go ahead and close out the show. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joe.